Alright, so I just finished reading the last of the Fallen books, and I guess that it's time to do another series wrap-up video. I know that I haven't been doing a lot of them with some of my other series. I've been having a lot of low spoon time recently, but since this was a series I started on YouTube, I feel almost obligated to wrap everything up on YouTube. The second book in the series picks up where we left off at the end of Fallen. Daniel takes Luz to a school in California which secretly houses half angels, half demons, and the like. Daniel had entered into a temporary agreement with Cam in order for both of them to hunt down and kill everybody who was after Luz, and put a pin into that because I'm going to get back to it. But this truce with Cam is supposed to last for 18 days, and he tells Luz that he'll be back after those 18 days are over. I'm going to spell this out for everybody and emphasize a few things because I feel like both Luz as well as the author still fail to understand a few points. Daniel tells Luz that he's entered into an agreement with Cam. This truce is because they both agree that supernatural beings trying to kill Luz is bad. This truce is going to last for 18 days. At the end of this period, Daniel is going to come back and collect Luz. However, the literal second Daniel leaves her at the school, Luz falls to pieces. Like, she cannot possibly stand to be away from Daniel. Like, girl, get a freaking grip already. My dog has less separation anxiety than you do. I know that 18 days is a while to be without your romantic partner, but come on. You shouldn't be crying your eyes out after 2 seconds. Following this, Luz then attends classes with the new school. However, she's shoved into the classes with all the other supernatural creatures where she learns a bit more about the world of angels and demons, as well as the shadows that have haunted her for her entire life, called announcers. However, one of the things Daniel had told Luz not to do was to leave campus. The angels on the campus would be able to shield her from those who would wish her harm, and leaving would, well, open her up to get murdered. And what does Luz do? You guessed it. She leaves campus where she almost gets murdered by an angelic assassin. The only reason why this series doesn't end there is because Cam shows up at the last second. And hey, do you remember how I told you to put a pin into the idea of the people who are hunting down Luz? Yeah, this is literally never explained. Not in the second book, not in the third, and for most of the fourth, it's still a freaking mystery. They want Luz dead. Why? Who knows? I'm convinced that not even the author knew why when she was writing this, and I will once again come back to this point when I get to the fourth book. Also, do you remember how I emphasized that Daniel was working with Cam and that he'd told Luz about this? Yeah, Luz apparently doesn't remember, and granted, it was at an insanely stressful time in her life, but still, Luz apparently has the memory of a goldfish and gets randomly upset when she finds out that they're working together when she sees them together on the roof of the school. As the book progresses, Luz is told in class that you can watch the events recorded on the announcers almost in the way you can watch a movie. She then begins to watch glimpses from her past lives, which makes her curious about what some of them were like. One of her new friends tries to take her to the house of one of her former parents, but Luz chickens out before she can even ring the doorbell. However, the tipping point is when Luz realizes that she can travel through the announcers, and a bunch of them end up in Vegas, where Luz almost talks with one of her sisters from a past life. Ariane grabs the kids before they can expose Luz's secret, however. A bunch of Luz's new friends, as well as old friends from the first book, return to Georgia for Thanksgiving with Luz's parents. There's a huge fight between all of these angelic assassins and the main characters. Luz eventually has enough, and she just steps into an announcer and leaves. This begins the third book in the series, and I think that the best way to describe this is to say that it's like snippets of episodes of Doctor Who, except that they each somehow suck worse than the last, and none of them serve much of a purpose. And again, I'm circling back to the fact that literally nothing was explained to anybody, especially the readers, until the last half of the fourth book. Luz jumps from time period to time period, going further and further back with every announcer that she goes into. Sometimes she spends a couple hours in one time, and in others she'll spend several days. And every single time she finds that time and location's version of herself. always with a different name, always with a different ethnic background and backstory. Daniel is also there, usually under a name that matches both the time and location. And Daniel can also change his physical appearance at will, whereas Luce is obviously born looking different every time. Now, normally time travel books are my jam, especially books about a love that literally transcends time and space. The third book in this series was nothing but a meandering mess. The literal cherry on top was when the character that Luce had found in the space between time jumps turned out to be literally Satan. I saw it coming from a mile away, but it was one of those things that made me want to chuck my computer out the window in frustration, because out of all the cheap ploys and plot twists that the author could have picked, she picked this guy was literally Satan. Because of course he was, and of course the author went there. Anyway, the third book meandered on for way too long, with Luce going further and further back, constantly seeking something, but never bothering to tell the readers anything. Daniel follows after her, but is constantly sidetracked by going back to watch random things that have nothing to do with anything. One of them is a point in Cam's life, but put another pin into this because I'll get back to this in a moment. When the book finally decides to end, I felt like literally nothing came from it. What did Luce learn from any of this? I have no idea, because Luce has no idea. She spent probably a month going back in time, but she somehow walked away no more richer in life lessons than when she went in, which honestly, I think that phrase sums up this series. The fourth book opens mere hours after Luce left back in time. Following this, Daniel uncovered Lucifer's plot. He wants to change time during one precise moment, when God kicked all of the angels out from heaven over Lucifer's disobedience. It was a literal 9-day fall, and since history is apparently circular and all events are unfolding simultaneously, the fall is currently happening. They then go on what's basically a really long scavenger hunt in order to track down artifacts that were created when the angels fell to Earth. Daniel had done a minimal amount of research into the artifacts, and they have a vaguish idea of where they are now. After Daniel and Luce recover the first artifact, they go to meet up with some of the others who were sent elsewhere to locate something else. However, when they get to the second location, they meet up with some of the angelic assassins. Well, I've been using the term angelic rather loosely in regards to these people. See, they were technically kicked out from heaven, but they refused to side with Lucifer. They're more purgatory creatures, I guess you could say. Anyway, after a fight with this group, they decide that it's in their best interest to team up with our main characters in order to stop Lucifer from changing history, which I guess it's a good reason to change sides. And by the way, there's still zero explanation given as to why these people were so set on killing Luce. They set off and meet up with somebody who is actually Miss Sophia's identical twin sister. Do you remember Miss Sophia? She's a lady who worked at the Sword and Cross Librarian, but then turned out that she was evil and she murdered Penn. Throughout the series, I'm not sure if I ever actually got over Penn's death. Anyway, if Sophia is evil, then her sister is the good one. And Lord, I cannot remember the sister's name, but I'm not sure if it matters anyway. So they all go off to some random cave where Miss Sophia and some of her evil friends are evilly holding some of the other angels captive. They murdered them, but at this point these other angels are nothing but random background characters. They've barely appeared in the series, full stop. So despite the fact that they were named characters, it might as well be the clerk at 7-Eleven for all that these characters mattered to the overall plot. After the death of those angels, Cam ends up killing Miss Sophia, which I'm in favor of. What I don't like is that the murder happens off-page, which is so insanely frustrating. I wanted revenge for Penn, not this, it's done, I've killed her after it's over. But anyway, the forgettable named sister ends up leading Luce into a ritual that involves Luce killing the lady. This unlocks part of the curse on Luce's mind. And then, do you remember all of those pins that I kept telling you to put into things about how the author failed to tell us literally anything about what was going on? So yeah, Luce is actually an angel. The the number 3 angel, if that's somehow important. And she was she was literally created to be the counterpart to Lucifer. You know, before he turned evil and everything. Lucinda and Lucifer. The entire thing is so stupid that I kind of want to beat my head against something until the dumb stops. The assassins, trying to skip the scales of heavenly justice on their own favor by killing Luz. The lesson she learned, all about her curse, but somehow relating to the fact that she's an angel. And with the knowledge that Luz was originally Lucifer's girlfriend, you can probably guess where all of this is going from there. They broke up because she refused to take his side, but despite the fact that Lucinda was standing against Lucifer, God decided to punish Luz by cursing her, and also Daniel by extension to forever chase after her. Yeah, I still don't get it either. And then God is like, okay, so you figured it out, but I still don't like you, so now I'm going to curse both of you. Okay, bye! The book ends with Daniel and Luz, now both human, finding each other at a party in their new lives. The angels watch over their friends, also finally free from being awkwardly background characters in the Daniel and Luz story, but wanting to see how the next chapter unfolds regardless. And then that is, as they say, is... Wait a second, this isn't adding up. Daniel and Luz met in the first book. Luz goes to the angel school in the second book. Luz goes through time in the third book. Luz uncovers who she actually is, and she and Daniel are recursed in the fourth book. So if the Daniel and Luz story is now over, what exactly is the fifth book? The story that literally nobody asked for. The story between Cam and a really random character named Lilith. Do you remember the other pin that I told you to remember about how when Daniel was chasing after Luz, he made a stop to visit a moment in Cam's life? Yeah, this book is all about that. See, Cam once met a girl, Lilith, and they were in love and were about 2 seconds from getting married, but Lilith threw a fit over the location where they would get married. They did not get married. Now that Cam is apparently no longer bound by the Daniel and Luz curse, he wants to track down Lilith. His relationship with her happened such a long time ago, and he wants to find her in heaven, only to be told, surprise! She's burning in hell! So he goes down, and Lucifer, whom I will now call Luke because that's what he went by throughout the final book, agrees to make a deal with Cam. Lilith is caught in what I'm calling a hell loop. It's basically several weeks of pure emotional and psychological torture before Lilith's memories are restored to her and she remembers everything. Her current loop is high school, which, no, high school is hell really checks out. And on the surface, the idea that Cam could convince Lilith to love him probably seems okay, except that Luke wipes Lilith's memories until she only just knows her life in any given hell loop, only that her memories might be gone, but the burning hate for Cam somehow still remains. What follows is a writhing mess of Lilith wanting to be with Cam but constantly pushing him away every other chapter. The entire thing was in dire need of an editor, as there were several points in which I kind of side-eyed the ebook and was like, okay, but you already established this. Maybe you're the one with the memory of a goldfish here. Cam didn't really have much of a personality throughout the entire Daniel Luz story, and now that he's front and center, I feel like it became painfully obvious just how much of a personality that he doesn't have. Lilith also didn't have much of a personality outside of being the angry girl who didn't even know why she was angry. Not really. Intersected between the flatline main plot was the backstory of how Cam and Lilith's story began thousands of years earlier. Lilith was in the background of one of Luz's lives, which is how Cam met her. They fell in love, but Cam didn't want to tell her who and what he was for a number of reasons. As mentioned earlier, they were supposed to be married. However, Lilith called off the entire thing when Cam wanted to get married by the river, and she wanted to get married in the temple. I said this so many times during my Patreon comments that I lost count, but a relationship that ends over something as dumb as where you are going to get married is obviously not a relationship that's going to last. Furthermore, something that I was insanely hung up over was, Why did Cam suddenly start to think about Lilith after literally thousands of years had passed? Yes, this book implied that Cam and the other angels didn't have a choice in being background characters to the Daniel Lu story every time it unfolded, but there were like 16 years in between each chapter of it, so why did he wait so long to find her? He kept talking about how much he loved her even after everything that happened, but honestly, he couldn't have loved her that much if he left her to rot in hell for so long. And what exactly did happen between him and Lilith? It wasn't so cut and dry as Lilith deciding to leave Cam at the literal altar. Following Cam leaving Lilith moped around for days and refused to take off her wedding dress. Luke found her and made her a bet that she could win Cam back. She agreed and they tracked Cam down, only for Cam to be so stuck in his own grief and self-pity that he refused to take her back. Luke then encouraged Lilith to jump off a cliff and she ended up in hell because of her bet with him. The actual plot of the book, the high school, but it's actually just hell business, was so weird yet boring. It honestly felt like the author trying hard to make high school is just awful, yet trying to compensate and write out her revenge against girls who are mean to me in high school. In general, I'm not opposed to high school stories. I've seen some that were well written and interesting, but I usually just see garbage. This one was somehow worse than usual, but I kept having to remind myself that it was literal hell, so of course this was happening. However, there's only so much stupid that I can take before my brain just refuses to do anything with what's going on. Cam convinced Lilith that he loved her in the end, and Luke kind of shriveled up and disappeared while all the other souls who were background characters in Lilith's hell escaped. However, thanks to how tedious and mind-numbingly stupid that this entire thing was, by the time that this happens, I kind of didn't really care what happened so long as I never had to read anything else about Cam or Lilith or Luke ever again. And there we go, The Fallen series by Lauren Kate. All 5 books are now behind me. It was a miserable series, but overall I'm going to file it under the 100% forgettable category. These characters were about as spicy as flour and just as exciting. The only real twist in this series was that Luce was an angel, and even that felt cheap with zero build up to the fact like it was thrown in to just try to be spicy, and it was the literary equivalent of putting raisins into potato salad. It made 0 sense. On deck for Patreon is the rest of the Shatter Me series, which should be interesting. I will see you on Monday for the usual updates. Sayonara.